Welcome to the OLV Daily Reflection for Thursday, January 7th. Today's first reading continues to come to us from the first letter of St. John. Today's selection comes from the 4th and 5th chapters of this letter. It reads, "Beloved, we love God because he first loved us. If anyone says, 'I love God,' but hates his brother, he is a liar. For whoever does not love a brother whom he has seen cannot love God whom he has not seen. This is a commandment we have from him. Whoever loves God must also love his brother. Everyone who believes that Jesus is the Christ is begotten by God, and everyone who loves the Father loves also the one begotten by him. In this way we know that we love the children of God, when we love God and obey his commandments. For the love of God is this, that we keep his commandments. And his commandments are not burdensome, for whoever is begotten by God conquers the world, and the victory that conquers the world is our faith." As I prayed with this passage, my heart was drawn to the second to last verse of this passage, when St. John reminds us that God's commandments are not burdensome. We know this to be true because of who God is. God is love. God created us, sustains us, and offers us eternal salvation through his Son, Jesus Christ. Therefore, the commandments given to us by God are not meant to be a burden, but they are truly meant for us to become more and more his beloved children. As any good parent only commands his children to do the tasks that are important for the child and the family, how much more does our eternal Father give us the commandments that we need in order to know the fullness of his love and goodness? Now, with all that being said, I know many people believe that the commandments of God are truly burdensome. And if we are attached to certain sins in our lives, yes, God's commandments are burdensome, because it will be hard to let go of these sins. If we believe we know what is best for our lives, God's commandments will be a burden, because we'll be doing something in God's commandments that we do not believe to be important for our lives. And if we've had a bad experience of religion or faith earlier in our lives, these realities can cause God's commandments to feel as if they are a burden. But the common theme through all of these is the same. People reject God's commandments and other sources of authority in their lives because they believe all these realities infringe upon their personal freedom. And as I've talked about before in the daily reflections, a person's freedom is never meant to be absolute. We are made in the image and likeness of God, so we have the ability to choose in a way that makes us different than the rest of creation. However, we can't do whatever we want with whomever we want, when we want, because we can hurt ourselves and others if we do not respect the limits that come with being humans, and humans with bodies, and humans that have to take responsibility for their actions. So at different points in our lives, I imagine that all of us have gone down this path of rejecting God's commandments for one reason or another. Therefore, let us think about the results of these actions. When we chose to reject God's commandments because we used our freedom poorly and did not respect the boundaries placed before us, how did things turn out? At least for my life, I know that rejecting God's commandments always had a negative consequence for my life. Now, these consequences were not always immediately clear in my life, but I do look back upon my life and can see how following God's commandments is so much easier than rejecting these sources of grace, truth, and love in my life. And finally, God's commandments are not burdensome because at the end of the day, Jesus Christ bared them all. Our God showed us the way, showed us how we can live these commandments and truly bring them to the fullest. So yes, God created us but through his Son, Jesus Christ, he showed us how these commandments can be lived out to the fullest. So as we move through this new year, let us give God's commandments our full assent. Let us not reject them, push them aside, or pretend they're not there. And if we do this, brothers and sisters, we will be able to navigate whatever's in store for us in this coming year in a way through which we use our personal freedom well, but also will have, again, the sources of love, grace, and peace in God's commandments active in our life. Our Lady of Victory, pray for us.